Alrighty, folks, welcome back. Another segment here, Cracking the Code with yours truly, Craig Peterson. Grab your cup of joe or whatever it is you might be doing while you are listening. Get comfortable because we're going to whisper through cyberspace today. Yeah, that's the clue, what we're going to be talking about. You know, we've all had those hearty chats with a friend or a close colleague at our favorite coffee shop, and you've got the air buzzing with just all kinds of noises, of sounds, of activity, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, laughter. In fact, I have a track of a coffee house that I play to relax in the background. Yeah, believe it or not. Well, we've all been there, and we've been having conversations with people. I've had a lot of little business meetings in those coffee shops, and we kind of expect that conversation to stay strictly between the two of us, right? Nobody's eavesdropping over our chat about a famous meatloaf, for goodness sakes. Who cares about the meatloaf? Unfortunately, though, folks, when it comes to our digital conversations, we might have more ears tuned in to our latest family recipe exchange than we bargained for, right? Imagine a room full of people all dropping their scones to listen in on the secret meeting and seasoning and what Aunt Petunia did, right? Totally absurd, right? In too many cases, though, that's what's happening with our online chats. Now, when you get right down to it, here's kind of the bottom line, because we've all had habits of talking about stuff that we're doing. We talk about it out loud and in that coffee shop, which probably isn't the worst thing possible. But then those sunny beach pictures, right? Check-ins, the breathtaking landscapes, that photo that took you 1,000 shots to get just right. And you're going to post it online, right? Who doesn't want to flaunt their drool-worthy vacation at the Grand Canyon or the nightlife in Miami after spring break? But wait, do we ever pause and consider all of the implications of revealing too much? I'm not talking about that bikini. So picture this, Jimmy the Jazz Man, right? He's a guy who's having a blast at the New Orleans Jazz Festival. He's posting live updates on Facebook while his Cape Cod home sits empty. Then the unexpected happens. Davey, this is the neighbor here, Jimmy's neighbor. He's a notorious no-gooder. He stumbles onto Jimmy's posts and he sees an opportunity. So he moseys on over to Jimmy's place because where's Jimmy? He is in New Orleans and he's posting pictures on social media. And it's not just the local bad guys we need to worry about. There's a whole host of digital snoops, what I call hosers, right, who are trying to suck up all information they can about you. They are eyeballing your online activities. Just a casual mention of your trip could give these hosers the ticket they need to pick your digital pocket. They're using it in a business sense again and again, where someone who might be a CFO, a CEO, an accounting person, or somebody goes ahead and posts something online. And now you know that person's out of town. And there have been hundreds of millions of dollars stolen because somebody was kind of listening in, right? Finding out a little bit more about it. And I've told you about some of these stories before, including that one with Olga, that $45 million that she was able to steal. So think about it, folks. Disclosing when and where you're going on vacation essentially hands over an engraved invitation to these hosers, right? Mi casa y su casa, except I won't be home, right? Feel free to drop by, hack my stuff, maybe loot my place, right? That's really what you're saying to these people. They don't think the same way you and I think at all. It sounds scary, but don't worry, right? I'm not about to dump all of this on you without offering some handy tips. We're going to dig more into it as well about how to use end-to-end encryption, what that is, what that all means. So obviously here, think before you post. On social media, restrict access to your account to just people you actually know, friends and families. And share those vacation pictures after you've returned home. use private settings overall here on your social media accounts. You only want trusted pals they can see your posts. Always a good idea. Make sure you enable two-factor authentication on all your online accounts, because when our friendly neighbor, right, you know, the guy that broke into Jimmy the Jazzman's home, when he comes by and finds your computer sitting there, so you're going to be able to log into your computer, so you're going to be able to gain access to your email, which then gives him access to any site that you use your email address for password recovery, like your bank, right? On and on. So use two-factor authentication. And if you got my newsletter here, I had a thing in there asking people what they would like from me. I have 4 different ideas of things I thought might be really, really good. And I totally think still that they'd be really good. But one of them is some workshops. And I'm thinking about trying to do a workshop for you guys about how to do it, how to turn it on. So many people are kind of afraid to do it. I had an email from a listener who was saying, yeah, you talk about it, but I just don't think I can do it myself. But we'll help you with that, right? So inform a trusted neighbor or a friend. Remember the whole neighborhood watch thing that many police departments engage in? Let them know about your travel plans. Let them know how they could potentially contact you. You know, now with smartphones and cell service all over the world, most of us are available no matter which tourist trap we're in, right? Because there is always cell service. So make sure they know. And by the way, I want to make sure you guys share this information with your friends as well, so that they all really understand what's going on. So let's talk about Sneaky Pete. That was actually a pretty good TV show if you saw that one, fairly recent. But even if he's listening in and you are using a secret language, he's not going to understand you, right? Because it's a secret language. Well, the secrecy that I'm going to talk about right now is called end-to-end encryption. It's like you and your friend are talking in your own secret language. Maybe you're twins, right? Don't they develop their own secret languages? I know my twins didn't, but yeah, they did have some speech impediments. But even if Sneaky Pete is leaning in, he would not understand a thing. That's what end-to-end encryption's about. But remember, when we're talking about end-to-end encryption, that your device that you're using to communicate has the messages in the clear. So you're using your smartphone or you're using your computer and you're using WhatsApp or Signal or something else. What happens? Well, you have to type it in, don't you? And it is there on your machine in the clear. And then on the other side, same thing happens. So if either one of your machines, your devices are compromised, that information gets out. And if you are side-loading apps, if you've rooted your phone, if you've done any of those nasty things and someone has installed some tracking software, some keyboard snatching software, that message isn't going to be secure. It doesn't matter how well it was encrypted as it was being transmitted. Correct? So apps are really key here, folks. Making it really easy peasy, WhatsApp. Now, WhatsApp was purchased by Meta. Yeah, those guys over at Facebook. I don't trust WhatsApp because it's now owned by Meta. How does Meta make its money? It sells information about you. Now, Meta swears up and down, no, we can't break in. And yet at the same time, they keep talking about inserting advertising. Well, they insert advertising based on what you're talking about and who you're talking to. So WhatsApp, I don't think can be trusted. But there is one app for end-to-end communication security called Signal that I do trust. Signal. Written by this guy, this Moxie Marlin Spike. There you go. And he had put this together to be very, very secure. In fact, it has code in it that makes it so that some of these devices that are used to break into smartphones, that are used by some of these nation states as Israeli software to be able to spy on their enemies, that he's built into Signal stuff that will make those applications crash. Isn't that kind of cool? Okay. Very, very good. So who cares if someone's snooping on my chats about the Red Sox? Well, would it matter if that casual chat turned into business matters? Maybe sharing some vital company secrets, prying eyes and ears still on you? Well, that's kind of what I thought here, okay? But who cares? Well, it does matter, and you should care. Because information nowadays, with machine learning, with AI, can all be pooled together in order to phish you, right? You've heard of catfishing. People get fooled all of the time. Spear phishing. It goes on and on. So 3 tricks here. 1, choose your messaging apps wisely. Stick with the ones that offer end-to-end encryption by default and that encrypt your messages even locally on your devices. Make sure you keep your devices secure, get regular updates, secure passwords, watch out for phishing attacks, and ramp up your knowledge base. All of this is in my newsletter last week. Hopefully you got it. If you didn't, make sure you get next week's, because there's always step-by-step instructions on what to do and how to stay safe. Sign up right now, CraigPeterson.com. It's right there. It's a homepage. Sign up now. We're talking meltdown-proof portable nuclear reactors. Bet you didn't wake up this morning thinking you'd be chewing on that one, did you? Now, I know what you're thinking. Craig, nuclear reactors, really? Doesn't this sound like a disaster just waiting to happen? You know, I have been talking about these new nuclear reactors for many years now, but stay with me here, because this is not your grandpappy's nuclear energy. This isn't what they came out with in the 1950s. This is about how a company named Radiant Industries is cooking up something wicked smart. Now, they're not the only ones who are doing this. These small, portable nuclear reactors really are the answer to all of these energy problems that we have, other than, of course, our motor vehicles that have internal combustion engines, right? They need gas, they need diesel, they need that kind of a fuel, and we all know that it is stupid to be pushing these electric vehicles so hard. Really idiotic and dangerous. And I got another article I'll be talking about based on a study showing that the electric cars emit 1,800, actually it's more than 1,800 times as much particulate emissions as what comes out of a gasoline car's exhaust. 1,850, I think is that. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, electric cars, no. We are not ready. Technology is not ready, but these are. Now, Radiant Industries was started by an ex-SpaceX engineer. And we're not just talking about any old engineer. This is a guy who was there when Falcons were just birds, not rockets. This guy is working on something that might just revolutionize how we think about power. When you think about power generation, what do you think about? Well, of course, you had the big coal plants, the wood-fired plants, the nuclear plants. Now, of course, there are a half-decent percentage of our power being generated by windmills and solar, which is very, very unreliable, right? Well, these nuclear reactors, they're calling them nuclear generators, you could fit into a shipping container. So imagine that, portable power plants that'll generate electricity for 5 years, no bigger than the truck that's bringing your Amazon packages. Now, what's the big deal? Well, hey, I'm glad you asked. These aren't just any nuclear reactors. These little beauties are kind of like those no fear shirts from the 90s. Remember? These nuclear reactors are basically meltdown proof. And considering how hot it gets, we're talking way more than lobster red. We're talking 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's no small feat. And the 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, by the way, is a higher temperature than most of these old-fashioned nuclear reactors are running at. Now, before we start thinking this is science fiction, let me paint your picture as clear as the Kennebec River. Imagine a bunch of tiny poppy seeds, but instead of baking them into a muffin, they're fueling a reactor. These are called treacle particles, and tiny as they are, they're sturdy enough to stand the heat without turning your backyard into, a no-go zone, right? So is it safe? Well, absolutely. We're not talking about the kind of tech that goes bananas at the drop of a hat. We're not talking about the technology in Fukushima, Japan, where they never bothered to follow the instructions on their nuclear reactor, okay? This is the type of reactor that doesn't need external power, that is not going to melt down, that can't melt down, using basic physics, all right? So these little guys can take the heat. And then some. They're using helium as a coolant. You know, the stuff that makes the balloons float. And this is going to keep things chill, even if things go south, right? And what's even cooler is you've only got to refuel these bad boys once every 5 years. Imagine that. You're setting up a shop in a little off-the-map place where the grid's as unreliable as getting a fresh cannoli in a gas station. Suddenly, you've got dependable power for half a decade. This is just earth-shattering, people. Absolutely. So let's talk about the practical side of this. Let's say you're running a business. Let's say you want to be up in the woods of Maine or in the deserts of Arizona, wherever you might be, and there's no power around. What are you going to do? What if the power is as expensive as it is in New England that has some of the highest power prices in the country? Or heaven forbid you want electricity and you're in Hawaii, right? There are all kinds of graveyards out there for the wind farms that they built, and now they're just even too expensive to bother tearing down. They're rusted out. They haven't been used in more than a decade, right? So you're in Hawaii, very, very expensive. Or let's say you have your own private island, right? So what do? What do you do? Well, when you're running a business, you want to make sure that the lights are on without selling your soul to the electric company, right? And the electric company is going to make you pay to pull the electricity in, especially when you're in the middle of nowhere. And that's where these small powerhouses shine. These little nuclear reactors, these portable nuclear reactors or generators, as they're calling them, power about 1,000 homes, or, again, various types of manufacturing businesses. And sure, it might sound complicated, right? Just like my Aunt Kathy, when she's had one too many espressos, she's going on and on and on, and you have no idea what she's talking about. But I promise this is nothing to get in a twist over, right? So here's a skinny on what you can do to keep on top of this, because this is the future, right? Solar and wind are not reliable. And I'm all for nuclear power. I absolutely agree with that. Absolutely. I think right now we should be using what works for us. There's nothing better as far as amount of energy per pound and safety than using diesel or gasoline in our vehicles, okay? Don't get me wrong. But a lot of people want to move off of it, and I can see why. But here's another advantage to these nuclear reactors. I don't like the electric cars. You know that already. I think they're cool and all that, right? And I don't want to insult you, but the bottom line is the electric vehicle industry has been propelled because of government regulation, not because it's the right answer to our problems at all. And since when does government pick the right technology? Well, with these types of nuclear reactors, what are you going to do? Well, you're not going to stick them in your car, okay? I get it. The U.S. Air Force built an airplane powered by a nuclear reactor, you know. Not the best of ideas when you get right down to it. But right here, what we're talking about is having the nuclear reactor that's at a filling station, because hydrogen is a phenomenal fuel source for our cars. So you can fill it up about the same speed as it takes you to fill up the gas in your car, and there are zero emissions from hydrogen. And Toyota has been working on an engine that burns hydrogen, a regular type of piston engine. But most of the time we're talking about hydrogen fuel cells. But it takes a lot of electricity to make hydrogen. Well, guess what? Now you've got cheap power. Cheap power from one of these small, portable nuclear generators. So consider the long-term savings. Less resilience on the grid means more money for your bottom line if you're a business. It means cheaper electricity if you're a consumer. It means we really could do hydrogen-powered vehicles, which makes way more sense than the electric vehicles that are crazy polluting our globe. Everything from the mining of the minerals in the batteries to the batteries themselves. And I've got more problems with them that we'll be talking about here a little bit later. So stay empowered. Don't stay in the dark. Make sure you get my newsletter. If you didn't get these articles, too late, but you can always get next week's. It's free, CraigPeterson.com. Hey, I know it's hard to imagine that science and government are leaving things out, right? Since when would they, omit certain facts just to make their lives easier, to make more profit? Pharmaceutical companies, for instance, when would they ever do something like that? Yeah, okay. Well, we're going to talk right now about electric vehicles, right? As EVs, as the cool kids call them, right? You've heard that before. There's a hot off the presses piece from Issues and Insights that's been really stirring the pot here. Funny or not, they claim that these shiny, newfangled electric vehicles are churning out more pollution than your grandpappy's old clunker. More pollution from electric vehicle being churned out by the vehicle. I'm not even talking about the how the electricity is made. More pollution than a gasoline-powered car, and then more pollution from electric vehicle than modern diesel engines. So buckle up. First of all, these AVs, they're slightly heavier than traditional gas guzzlers, or they're about 30% heavier. More weight means those brakes and tires wear down faster than you can say Bob's your uncle. And as a result, they're spewing out fine particulate matter. That's soot to us lay folks. That particulate matter is coming out like nobody's business, and that's no good for a green earth. For instance, the electric Ford F-150, also known as the Lightning, weighs roughly 6,500 pounds. This is approximately 1,600 pounds more than its gas-powered cousin. The hefty weight difference is mainly attributed to this massive 1,800-pound battery that powers the electric model. While this additional weight brings some advantages such as boosting traction, 0 to 60, right? We all saw President Biden so proud of himself and a Ford F-150 Lightning and how fast it was. Well, it does that, but it also puts more strain on the brakes and the tires. And that strain alone causes the electric vehicles to emit 1,850 times more soot than a modern gas-powered vehicle. Is that something or what? So let's talk a little bit here about the foul lineup on these so-called clean-cut chariots. Number one, they are not clean machines, not the way we're made to believe. Shifting emissions to the power plants isn't solving a pollution problem. It's NIMBY. It's not in my backyard, okay? It's sweeping the dust under the rug. 2, cheaper to run an electric vehicle? Baloney. Between the higher insurance costs, more frequent repairs, and more expensive repairs, even for simple things, your wallet's going to be giving you the evil eye. 3rd, battery woes. The promised range is slippery. I mentioned Joe Biden, right? The promised range, vehicle range, miles, is as slippery as a politician's promise. Turns out you should only charge your battery up to 80% and keep it above 20% to avoid giving the battery the heebie-jeebies, just like your laptop or your phone. That effectively slashes your road-tripping dreams. And that's if they even went as far as they claim on a full charge, all the way down to zero. Now, some of you folks might have stumbled on the show by pure happenstance or maybe through a chum's jabber out there. There's no ads here, right? This is just pure, unfiltered Craig. So don't be shy about shouting out how you landed in our little tech powwow today. Share it with your friends, please. This is the only way we get more listeners, more subscribers to the free newsletter. More visibility means that I can do this. And I don't take any proceeds from the radio stations that air the show or anything else, right? This is truly a labor of love, okay? So let's get back into it here. Let's talk now about the ethical and environmental issues in electric vehicle battery production. So the dark side of so-called green technology, big deal here. Our world is moving towards what they call sustainable technology. It has turned out now, scientists are showing that, in fact, we will never run out of oil because it is part of a natural process of the earth. It's something that's produced naturally. We always, when I was in school, we were told, oh, yeah, it's made from plants and dinosaurs, right? No, it is not. Okay, it's a hydrocarbon base, of course, and it is something that's part of the natural processes of the earth beneath us. Okay, so these EVs are this beacon of hope, providing greener alternatives amid the climate crisis. How many times have you heard that? All right, but balanced against the environmental benefits, which are questionable. In fact, they're not any environmental benefits when you consider the negatives. There's a dark side. For instance, the mining of the minerals. Millions of tons of overburden have to be removed to get at things like the nickel. So in the quest for minerals like cobalt, lithium, and nickel, which are essential components of EV batteries, has led to some ethical challenges. UNICEF estimates 40,000 children involved in dangerous mining activities in the Democratic Republic of Congo in search of cobalt. Yeah, that was in 2014. I don't think some things have gotten much better since then. Furthermore, a significant number of the world's top manufacturing companies have faced allegations of tolerating or even endorsing forced labor practices in their supply chains. Oh, I thought slavery was out. No, your electric car is being partially built by slaves, by children, mining toxic materials, facing collapses of these mines that don't meet any of our U.S. standards. The challenges don't stop at mining. The disposal of used EV batteries poses another grave environmental concern. Toxic waste that comes from these batteries, if mishandled or discarded improperly, in fact, most of these batteries are not ever recycled. So that's leading to poisoning of our soil, of our water supply. Right? The leakage of these hazardous substances, not just from the car batteries, but from other things. For instance, those solar panels that you're trying to get rid of because they broke or they're too old, you want something more efficient. All toxic leaks. It's nuts, right? So there's some solutions that have been proposed here. Improved battery technology with safer, more abundant materials, sodium-ion batteries. But you've heard me talk about the new nuclear power, the portable nuclear that can be used to efficiently make hydrogen. Why are we forcing electric vehicles down everyone's throat? Follow the money. We need to be exploring all legitimate ways to replace internal combustion engines, coal-powered plants, whatever you're looking at, and to do it effectively and to be able to do it on a widespread basis. And we are not doing it. Okay? This is a huge problem, my friends. And folks, we have to get involved in the political side. There's too much money involved, too many lobbyists in Washington, D.C., too many people dying so that others can have EVs, electric vehicles, and feel really good about themselves, saving the planet. You people are just slobs without having electric vehicles. Hey, this was in my newsletter this week. If you missed it, you missed it. But get the next one, CraigPeterson.com. We've been using AI, and if you've used it, you might have noticed that it isn't that good right now. It's maybe 80% in getting you ideas. It's close to 100% when it comes to grammar. It is, depending on the AI you're using, not terribly good at graphics, although it does some pretty cute stuff sometimes. No two ways about it. But what's the buzz about bias-free AI nowadays? Well, you might have heard and you might have chuckled yourself about this new AI thingamajig called Gemini from our friends over at Google. They're looking at Gemini to completely replace normal Google queries. It's going to be interesting to see how they do that because, of course, Google makes a lot of money from advertising. So how are they going to work the ads into the Gemini results? Well, I guess that's pretty simple, right? Just shove them in there. Well, people are saying that Gemini is kookier than a bag of hammers, but let me tell you, it's serious potatoes here for those from Maine. You see, Gemini is supposed to be the shining knight in digital armor, free of bias, fair as a, bean supper. But it seems like it's jumping out of the boat before it even gets its feet wet. You remember this from not too long ago where people asked Gemini to come up with some pictures of white folks, and it turned around and said, no can do. That's reinforcing some not so nice stereotypes because white people shouldn't exist. I added that part in there. Fair enough. But then it cranks out images of non-white Vikings, a black George Washington without batting an eye. Well, isn't that curious? It gets curiouser and curiouser, doesn't it? Well, and it isn't just Google that's wading through the muck here. Microsoft's AI tool, which of course is OpenAI's tool, got caught with its pants down too, generating images that would make your grandma blush or Gramp search for the shotgun. You might remember Microsoft released an AI, what was this, 2 years, maybe 3 years ago, a chatbot, and they attached it to Twitter at the time, and it was less than a day before its racist and sexist roots started showing out. So what's the scoop? As much as folks in suits want us to push anti-racism and diversity, equity, inclusion practices, this is really a stone's throw away from swinging right back into the biased land, but this time with the shiny fairness label slapped on it. I thought that being racist meant that you identified something or someone based on race, right? Well, then if this isn't racist, what is, right? You should not care about it. I agree with Martin Luther King, no question about it. Man should not be judged by the color of his skin. Well, that's where I want to tell you a story. Just imagine now, you're fresh out of school. You're ready to tackle the world. You got a pocket full of dreams, impressive resume. You've got letters from some of the professors in college, and you start shooting out job applications. You know how that goes, right? Some people submit hundreds of job applications all over the place. You go to all of the job fairs at the school, the job fairs that the state offers. You talk to your friends, you talk to your parents' friends. Well, unbeknownst to you, AI behind the scenes is peeking through your resume, deciding if you fit the bill or someone else gets your seat at the table based on some hidden equity quota. Now, you, of course, are familiar with the whole idea of equity, equality of outcome. Well, it turns out that LinkedIn got nailed for this particular one. Again, using an AI. And if you had the best ratings, you would not even be presented for some jobs at all. They were doing it from a racist standpoint. They would only recommend people based on things other than their qualifications. It's shocking to see. Search online. There's articles about this up there. So what does this mean for business owners who aren't really tech wizards? Well, crucially, you've got to know what's cooking with AI in your business. Have you got an AI helping to sort through job candidates or serve up ads? Are you using one of these sites out there, like LinkedIn, and there are many others, Glassdoor? Are you using some of those sites that are using AI? That have hidden biases as well as obvious biases? Yeah, this is getting really difficult, isn't it? The AIs might be deciding things on the lowdown that you never signed up for, that you don't want. You want the best candidate. You don't care what race they are, or what sex or gender they might be. Sometimes, and much of the time nowadays, you don't even care about where they are located, because so many jobs can be handled virtually from a remote location. But how about the bias that's built in, right? How's a business that's looking to build its own AI to support its sales efforts going to handle things? It's a real big deal nowadays. Lots of companies are doing that. You probably got my email. I'm thinking about trying to do that. Take all of the Craig Peterson knowledge here that I've accumulated over the last, 35 years writing, put it all together. Obviously go through it and sort through it, but put it all together and make it available. A Craig AI, if you will. Well, think of this as a smart robot. It's been reading a whole library of books, is soaking up the sum of knowledge. Pretty impressive, right? But there's a kicker. If the robot's only read books from the bad advice section, well, you can bet your bottom dollar its advice won't be top notch. And just recently, it came out that AI, OpenAI, talking about top notch, right? They certainly are the most popular out there, OpenAI. That's what Microsoft uses. That's what many people use. Kind of the industry standard. Turns out now that apparently it was programmed by feeding it YouTube videos. YouTube videos. Can you believe this? So picture this. You're a business owner, right? You've got this shiny new AI helping you with customer service, except it starts telling your customers the best way to fix the problems is turn it off and then turn it back on. Not very helpful, is it? Or maybe it's advising your customers to go use somebody else because they have a better reputation than you do. Right? Now, we don't want AIs to be the office clown, especially not in front of our customers. So we need to be sure they've been trained right, not just with a stack of random internet pages, but with quality, unbiased information. And yet we're using the AIs that are programmed by companies. We don't know what was fed into them. In fact, when OpenAI was asked about YouTube and did you feed it YouTube videos in order to train it, they got all of a sudden quite quiet about it. All right. So what was put into it? What was fed into it? What books were fed into it? Well, maybe none, right? But obviously some, because you can ask it to summarize the books that are copyrighted. But in some cases, even give the whole book. But that depends, again, on what it was programmed or what it was fed, right? So that's part of the training. The other part of the training is people looking at content. OpenAI has more than 5,000 people being paid pennies in Africa, 5,000 people basically programming it, taking information and deciding what should be fed into the AI. Okay? Is that a big deal or not? Well, here's what you can do, okay? Ask your AI provider what's being used to train your AI buddy. Was it just any old internet data? Was it YouTube? Was it Reddit? Which, by the way, Reddit, right, trying to sell all of the Reddit information that people put into it for free? Or was it some sort of a curated set of knowledge? Watch for updates from AI service. Technology, just like a fine line or my waistline, right? They don't stay the same. They're always changing, hopefully improving. And most importantly, keep an ear out for any funny business from your AI. Any hint of bias, put that robot in a timeout and give the provider a jingle, okay? You've got to call them. You've got to push back. You need to ask LinkedIn or Glassdoor or Monster.com or whatever you might be using. What is it that you are using for your AI? How are you going to match some of these people looking for jobs with me and my company, and how well they're going to do that, right? Ask about the AI's education, stay updated with the tech changes, listen for the AI's biases, okay? So remember that. So here's some go-getter action items that you can use to keep from being keel-hauled by this bias-free baloney that is we're seeing now. It's happening. Get informed, stay ahead of the game, learn about these AI tools. The more you know, the less they can snow you. Be clear with AI use. If you use AI in your business, be as transparent as saran wrap about how it's being used. Ask questions. If you're on the hunt for opportunities, this means you who are out there looking for jobs, don't be shy to ask companies how they're using AI in their selection processes. My brother is the head of hiring for one of these big consulting firms, and they're having trouble trying to figure out the AI stuff, where they have tens of thousands of applicants that they're trying to place, right? How can you do that? How should you do that? Demand fair sailing. Reach out to your lawmakers, representatives, etc. Tell them you want fairness, not a computer deciding your fate based on its secret recipe. That's true for courts in some parts of the world right now that are using AI to generate judgments. Stay hopeful and watchful. Technology's as changeable as New England weather. You got to keep an eagle eye on the updates, right? Hey, I'd love to know, how did you find us? Did a friend mention it? Did you find me on the radio, on television? My newsletter got forwarded? How did you find us? Why don't you share the information about the show, about the newsletter? If you're not getting the newsletter, I got a free one. Comes out every week. You need to sign up for at craigpeterson.com. Be loud, be proud. Share all of the stuff that's been helping you right here, craigpeterson.com. Well, once I get the peanut butter out of my mouth, I'm sure I'll be fine. Yeah, it was in the newsletter this week. It'll also be up on my website, so you can read the detailed document if you would like. But I want you to picture this. You're grabbing a little bit of R&R. You know, it's just hard to do that nowadays. So where do you go? Well, maybe you go when you grab a coffee at a coffee shop. You're sitting there. You got your pumpkin spice if it's that time of year, or maybe some other flavors, right? And paying crazy money for that silly thing at your favorite cafe. You just open up your laptop and you're going to fire off a few emails. You're going to look back at other ones you haven't responded to yet. Maybe you're going to look at some of the social media stuff, maybe some of the stuff for friends, what have they posted, but all of a sudden, bam, you have become a prime target for a hacker. There's a big problem that has been surfacing on and off for quite a while now, where hackers can get a hold of certain keys in your browsers. Now, those keys, they usually get them by hacking your computer. So you got to make sure that that computer is safe. There's a lot of steps. We're going to go through some of them right now. And again, if you go to craigpeterson.com, you can sign up for my email list. And if you are on my list, you've already got this. So just have a look for it, for some of those details. Well, you're a prime target for a hacker, kind of no matter who you are. Google found that their single sign-on thing, where you go to a website that isn't a Google property and you can sign in using your Google account or maybe your Apple account, etc. Well, Google had a problem where the bad guys were stealing these keys. The keys that are used to allow you to log into multiple sites, multiple Google properties that make it a lot easier for you. And if they have those keys, they can now go as you to any of these sites as well where you used a Google single sign-on. So think about that, right? So right now, you're among friends, I hope, right? And boy, I've got exactly what you need to fend off those digital ne'er-do-wells, those hosers that are trying to suck all of your data up. And that's why I put together this. It's a cybersecurity first aid kit. It's kind of a basic one, right? I'm trying not to make this stuff too confusing. It's like chicken soup for your digital life. It's a tried and true recipe to really help keep those online flu bugs out. Well, first up, folks, don't forget that you're using Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi networks are really kind of cool. You can walk around, you can be almost anywhere. Wi-Fi now lets you have FaceTime calls from literally anywhere in the world if you have the right kind of a data plan, right? And then you hook up via Wi-Fi or potentially Bluetooth to your phone and use a tethering function of that phone, right? So you can use this stuff almost anywhere. And Wi-Fi is compared to just a kind of a big juicy steak you're sitting there, right, for those hosers, and they're angling for an easy snack. It's really that important. So the current recommendation is not to use an open Wi-Fi system at all. But most of them are open Wi-Fis. When you go out and get that coffee, you might have noticed a warning, particularly if you're using a more secure computer or smartphone, etc. The warning saying, hey, this is an open Wi-Fi, and that means other people can see you, other people can scan you. Just this week, I did a scan on 3 different locations from the inside of one of my clients' sites. Well, obviously multiple sites, right? And just to find out what is running, what is available. So what I did is I have some software that checks every computer, checks every potential service that computer could have, and then produces a nice little report for me so I can go back and look at, is this legitimate? Should it really have file services turned on or DNS or a web server, right? All of those types of things. Now, if you're on a public Wi-Fi, the bad guys can do that. So they find a service, and then from that service, they have a look. In fact, there's software that does this automatically and says, oh, that one has these vulnerabilities, and now you can find out how to exploit those vulnerabilities. And usually, there's even software that you can get for free with just a couple of Google queries that allow you to compromise another computer. And of course, in this case, we're not talking about you compromising a computer. We're talking about the hosers compromising a computer, right? So don't be a sitting duck. You got to up your game. Now, we've talked about passwords before. There's a really kind of a cool article I read recently about Troy Hunt. Troy Hunt is the guy who started HaveIBeenPwned.com, and he started it about a decade ago. And it's interesting to read his history and some of the different major hacks that he's seen. But what he's done is he's taken these massive databases of people's usernames and passwords that came from hacks and has compiled it in such a way that you can go and you can say, hey, here's my email address. Does anybody know anything about me out there? And it'll go ahead and look for stuff the bad guys have on you. It'll tell you, hey, they've got your password, they've got your home address, they've got your sex, they've got your credit card number, social security, whatever it is they have and where it was stolen. So the passwords are ever so important, and the basic clever passwords are no longer any good. And that's another nice thing about what Troy Hunt has done here, right? So if you go to HaveIBeenPwned.com, HAVEIBEENPWNED.com. There's on the top, there's a tab you can hit that says passwords, and you can hit that and then type in your favorite passwords, and it'll tell you if that password has been used elsewhere and subsequently stolen. Now, that's important because of what's called password stuffing. We're not going to get into that stuff right now. We're going through our little kit. So next up, of course, stronger passwords was that one. Use a password manager. 1Password, the digit 1password.com is the only one I recommend right now. There's a key role, too, in software updates. The major patches coming out of Redmond from Microsoft and from Apple and Cupertino on a weekly basis, right? Microsoft doesn't have as many patches as Apple does because they batch them all up into one patch a month, which means you are exposed for the average would be 15 days. Thank you, Redmond. But, it looks better, right? This is the kind of stuff they do. Apple, of course, when they have something that needs to go out, it goes out, and it's very rare that the Apple patches break anything. And we just had, in the last couple of months, we had a couple of big patch problems thanks to Microsoft, and we disabled some of the Microsoft patches, and we had to do some workarounds for others. It's really kind of crazy, frankly. But when we're talking about software updates, these things are really a biggie, and it's something a lot of folks neglect. So please, these aren't annoying pop-ups to click away. There's your friendly neighborhood street cleaners tidying up your software streets, okay? Regular updates for your operating system and your apps mean less potential vulnerabilities. And you need to make sure when that pop-up comes up saying, hey, I want to install updates, or I need to reboot to install updates, just do it, all right? If you're running a home edition of Microsoft Windows, you cannot put them off for very long. In fact, I don't think you can really put them off at all. If you're using a commercial version of Microsoft Windows, you can actually schedule them and put them off for a week or two. And then what we do for our customers is we have something that's called an RMM, which allows us to schedule on a specific basis. So Microsoft comes out with patches on Tuesdays as a rule. So we usually wait until the weekend in case there's any sort of problems before we apply any patches, right? So the next thing in your recovery toolkit here is data backups. Absolutely the unsung hero of the digital realm. Can you imagine losing all of your data, years of hard work? Maybe it's your retirement. Maybe it's all of the savings. Your business is your retirement, right? That's a scary thought. So make sure you are backing them up like a mouse hoards cheese. You got to educate your employees if you are a business. If they're on the front line, they've got to know their stuff. It's everything from phishing through social engineering. We should talk about that sometime, but where they pretend they're somebody else. Maybe they pretend that they are your IT people. Multi-factor authentication. Look out at Duo.com, DUO, Delta, Uniform, Oscar.com. This is the superhero multi-factor authentication. This is what I use. This is what my clients use. Okay, it's phenomenal. It's a shield. It's a second layer of security, much stronger than a mere text message. Firewalls and antivirus, they work in common, and nowadays antivirus is not even close to being near enough. 60% of breaches are now caused by other types of hacks. It's not a virus that they're putting in there. They're using tools that Microsoft put in that are just as leaky as a sieve. It is Microsoft when it comes to cybersecurity. There's just terrible stuff they've done. Let's see here. And Microsoft comes with Windows, comes with a firewall, and guess what? It's not doing anything. It's letting anything through anything. It's just crazy. I'm coming up with something. Keep an eye out this year that is going to fix these configurations that Microsoft doesn't want to bother having to support, okay? Anyhow, it's online. Make sure you get my newsletter, CraigPeterson.com. Sign up right now, CraigPeterson.com. Hey, picture this. You're sitting at home. you've had that wonderful dinner. Maybe you're watching TV, watching the news, or Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, or Chicago Med, right? Or Chicago Justice. Whatever your favorite show is that's on TV. And you're sitting there debating if you should have ice cream or pie. You know, ice cream, Ben & Jerry's, they're not a great company, right? They do all kinds of things to support some of the anti-freedom stuff that's out there, and yet they call it freedom. Anyways, be that as it may, what should you do? Which is the superior dessert? And then all of a sudden, you're swamped with dessert-related ads. How rude, right? Well, now, shouldn't have Apple lock this stuff down like Fort Knox? We've talked about this so many times over history. It's probably one of the top, I know it's one of the top questions, maybe the top question I'm asked by people. You know, hey, we were talking about this, and, all of a sudden we got all of these ads for it. And the reasoning that I've seen for it before is that, well, yeah, here's what's happening. The marketers know you so well, and they know your social circle, who your friends are. They've literally built maps of all of this stuff. And so if somebody's talking about buying whatever it might be, you know that another friend is doing it too. Or in this case, where you're talking about apple pie versus Blue Bunny ice cream, then you're obviously at dinner time, and then everybody eats about the same time, right? I saw a study saying that the average dinner is eaten at 6:18 p.m. throughout the United States. So you can kind of see if you're normal or not, right? Or at least average. But is that what's really been going on? Well, when it comes to data privacy, Apple is tighter than a miser's purse strings. They've been very good about it. They've had a lot of advertisers complaining about it. They got rid of the way cookies used to work just to try and protect your privacy. So is Siri somehow playing a double agent, folks? No, don't worry. Apple stated this is a clear violation of their App Store guidelines. I can almost hear my fourth grade teacher slamming down the ruler on the desk and making her point there. Yeah, you see, Apple has software that scans the software that's submitted to the App Store. That's part of the reason Apple keeps, like 30% of the sale that's made there on the App Store. It's, hey, we've got this whole environment. We've made it safe. We're not allowing side loading. So we're trying to keep you safe from yourself buying apps from stores that might not be so good, might be malicious, right? So here comes the tech part. I want you to stick with me because it's simpler than you might think. When apps want to eavesdrop on you, they must request explicit user consent. That's legalese for you got to ask nicely. Okay? And remember, friends, Apple claims no app can get all up in your microphone or your camera's business without your permission. I bet you had a few aha moments there. When you see that little orange light on the screen of your smartphone, of your iPhone, it's a little orange light. There's also a red light. It's not a light per se. It's a little circle that is drawn on the display when you have been granted permission, or the app has been, right? So probably when you're filling your weekly crossword and you just, okay, whatever, I got to get back to my crossword, right? But you can turn it off. Remember, the name of the game here is consent. If they don't ask, it's not cool. And if Apple finds out about it, they will remove them from the App Store. And since Apple has that nice little orange or red, I think there might be a green light as well, it's up in the upper right-hand side of your display, their Apple's kind of expecting you to double-check to make sure that they're not being bad guys out there against you, okay? So Apple's sticking to its guns. They're claiming that in this case, this Cox, I should say, media group might just be twisting some vague terms to make a mountain out of a molehill. sprinkling a little dash of Wizard of Oz smoke and a big drape, the curtain that's hanging up there, trying to convince us they have magical powers when it's all smoke and mirrors. Okay, so there are multiple layers of privacy built into the iPhone. That's why I recommend it over any of the Android phones. Android phones, there's just issue after issue. But the biggest problem is that they are made by hundreds of different manufacturers. And inside there are thousands of parts. And, there's fewer parts than there used to be, right? They don't have discrete transistors. At least I hope your smartphone doesn't have those in there. But when you're looking at it, it's really kind of bundled. So they'll buy a wireless chip that they'll put into the phone. Apple does this too. And that wireless chip provides you with a radio. Did you know that? Your smartphone can almost always get radio, although you don't have access to the radio. Because it tends to be kind of staticky and a lot of interference. So they say, okay, we're not going to do it. But radio, Wi-Fi, cellular phones, cellular data, right? All of that's built into it. So we'll just stick with that one chip for now. Obviously, there's a lot of other components. There's the main processor. There's all of the memory. There's all of the GPUs. There's the graphics display, all of that stuff. But we'll just stick with that one wireless chip that's in there right now. So in Apple's case, they've probably only used, I think it is probably close to about 2 or 3 dozen different wireless chips over the years. So all they have to worry about are device drivers for 2 or 3 dozen wireless chips. This is the whole concept of a walled garden that Apple enforces, folks. So Apple says, hey, we're keeping you safe. We've got this wall up. Don't try and break down the wall, please. And we're going to keep it safe so they can control everything that's inside the garden. With Android, Google makes the Android operating system. They provide it then to a smartphone vendor, and then that smartphone vendor has to make a smartphone. So instead of having a few dozen of these wireless chips that the manufacturer has to worry about now, ultimately there could be hundreds. Google would have to worry about thousands of them when you consider all of the devices that have Android. Your car might have Android in it. Even if you've got Apple CarPlay, it still might have Android running some of the systems inside the car. Light bulbs have Android in it, right? All of these Internet of Things devices have it. It's everywhere. So Google cannot do a software update or a software patch and then provide it to you the next day. It can't happen. Right? Okay, people, I hear you're arguing, well, there's the Pixel, right? And can't we just, Pixel, we get it right from Google. Well, yeah, the Pixel, more or less, right? But that's it. That's the only one that Google's particularly worried about. So you've got that phone. It was made by a manufacturer. Google releases an update. They provide the update to the manufacturer, who now has to go in and make sure that it has third-party drivers that work with all of the versions of its phones and all of the parts within the phone, including the wireless chip, the display, the memory, the CPU, everything else. You see where I'm going with that, friends? You know, it gets to be a bit of a problem. So when we're talking about security in general, you're going to find your Apple is going to be better. And CMG, local solutions, well, they're still playing cloak and dagger, claiming they got some secret weapons with partners like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. Well, I'll keep an eye on this. Bottom line is they're not supposed to be spying on you, and they're probably not, frankly. Sign up. Make sure you get my newsletter with this and so much more for free. CraigPeterson.com. Hey, you know, things aren't always what they look like they might be, and it gets a little murky when we're talking about the world of AI. You know, it's exciting. We've been following it for a long time. Interest, of course, came really to head when ChatGPT 3 came out, and it has just been amazing. It has changed so many jobs. I think some businesses have really jumped the gun on it, though, getting rid of some of the writers and other people. You know, it does make people more efficient. But again, if they're more efficient, maybe they don't need as many of them. We've seen a lot of layoffs in the tech world over the last year plus, really. And some of it is because of AI. Yeah, AI can help improve the performance of programmers, maybe about 30% from the numbers that I've seen. Some say 40%, which might be true too. But what does this mean? Are we going to lose our jobs? I saw one prediction of 300 million jobs lost due to AI. You know, that's basically every job in the United States lost to AI. Now, that's a real big deal. Now, Reuters had an interesting article out that I included in my newsletter. Can you imagine a world where artificial intelligence, our beloved little AI coworkers, make jobs instead of taking them away? They had some really good ideas there. And they were quoting a gentleman who's the outgoing CEO of Mahindra. Now, you might have heard of them before. Of course, Mahindra, they make tractors, right? You might remember advertisements. Rush was a big advertiser of theirs. And they are really, they're in 100 different countries. They make a lot of things, and particularly focused in on the automotive industry. But they also make some other stuff, like some of the trucks and other things. Mahindra's really been at it for quite a while now. Very big company. So their outgoing CEO kind of spilled the beans on AI, because you can bet they are looking at it. We're talking about a business here that is worth, what is it here? I pulled it up earlier, $19 billion. So, you know, it's a pretty big business when you get down to it. So they've been paying a lot of attention. Mahindra also has a consulting arm over there in India that is used by a lot of U.S. companies, a lot of companies worldwide, to figure out what they should do next. So he knows of what he speaks, bottom line. Well, let's break this down. Who among you guys thinks that automation means pink slips? Send me an email. Let me know. I'd love to know your opinion. What's happened in your company, in your business out there? Have people been laid off specifically because of AI, where their job might have been eliminated by AI? I can see it in some manufacturing jobs where there already are a lot of jobs have been eliminated due to just automation in general. But how about the regular workers, right? Workaday workers that aren't just moving, turning a wrench, or doing some other physical labor out there. Send me an email, me@craigpeterson.com. I'd love to hear from you. me@craigpeterson.com. So no judgment. You know, I want you guys to be honest here. Well, who thinks automation means pink slips? Well, my friends, I don't think you could be further from the truth. And this counterintuitive news really highlights how AI could be, frankly, a knight in shining armor, breathing new life into all kinds of industries, redefining jobs on a massive scale. That I will agree with, right? They're not going to be job eliminations per se, but job redefinitions, as has always been the case whenever there's a big change, a new change in technology, isn't it? Now, this is crucial, especially for all my non-tech whiz listeners here. Embrace these AIs. Don't fear the technology. Learn the technology. Play with it. You can get a free account on Bard. You can use various versions of ChatGPT, OpenAI, over on Bing. Play with it. Get to know it. It might just be the key to, frankly, a shiny new future promotion, or better yet, maybe a thrilling career switch. Most people aren't that happy in their careers. The average worker, I think now, 3 different careers over their lifetime? Careers, not just jobs, whole careers, unlike me. Is it making sense so far? So I want you to think about what this could mean for you, for your job, for your company. Does this get intriguing? I thought so, because there's so many potential opportunities that we haven't even seen yet. Now, here's a twist for you. What if the real hosers weren't the people who were hacking or phishing, but those people who were resisting this wave of change, terrifyingly named AI? Kind of an ironic thing, isn't it, here? But I digress. We're going to talk about some solutions, not just ruffle feathers here, but it is a big thing, and it will ultimately be a very good thing, I think. I agree, again, with Elon Musk on this, where he sees the future, because of AI, being ever so much better than the past has been. So how does cybersecurity come into play with this? So let me tell you, my friends, how essential cybersecurity is in this brave new AI-dominated world. We have already been seeing phishing for years, but now phishing, I hate to use this term, but it's on steroids because of AI. They're using AI to trick you into doing things, into pretending they're your friend, to pretending they're your boss, and they can generate these emails that they're sending out en masse for a penny or less a piece. It's just crazy here. So we need to have kind of like sunscreen for your tech, right? You wouldn't go sunbathing, laying out in a beach in Florida without good SPF protection, now would you? Well, it's the same thing. You don't want to, in business, when we're talking about cyberspace, we don't want to go without having a protective shield. And let's talk about what a couple of those things are. And of course, you can find out a whole lot more if you take a look at my article that was in my newsletter that's titled Cybersecurity First Aid Kit, Immediate Actions. And man, there are some real immediate actions in there. But look at Cisco Umbrella. Absolutely. Go to opendns.com if you are a home user. They have versions for families, and it will help to stop you. If you click on a link that was generated by one of these hosers that's trying to attack you, it will stop you from being able to get to that website. It's that simple. And Cisco Umbrella is the higher level, the business versions, right? All you business moguls out there, you should be using Umbrella. We use it with every last one of our clients. No two ways about it. It is so important in this AI age. Configuring two-factor authentication. Use Duo, duo.com, and make sure if you're using Windows that Windows Defender is active and up to date. Take all of the patches, right? So there's a lot to think about here, but I want you to think about AI through a good light, what it can do to help. Really what AI is going to do is much the same thing that the assembly line did for Henry Ford. And for all Americans, it made something that had been out of reach for most people, the automobile, available for even the people who are working that assembly line. And that's what AI is going to do. A lot of the mundane work, the background work is going to be done by AI. Now, okay, I think that might produce some other problems, like having people who really don't know what they're doing anymore because they don't understand the behind the scenes. But I think AI ultimately is going to be a good thing, and should read this article I sent out, again, from Reuters, from the ex-CEO of Mahindra. Make sure you are on my email list so that you get my future newsletters, CraigPeterson.com. So have you ever heard of the term cookies? Not the sugary delights that, you have for birthdays and Christmas and Hanukkah and all of the other celebrations out there. But, they do make the taste buds do a happy dance. Mine are kind of right now, I'm salivating just thinking about cookies. No, I'm referring to internet cookies, specifically Google's what are called third-party cookies. And if you've used the internet, and I believe you have, you're going to want to hear this. First of all, what are the third-party cookies? If you go to a website and the website is using cookies, it's using them for a few different things. One, to help you navigate throughout the website. So if you don't have any cookies enabled, or you're using a very old browser like NSC, Mosaic, way back then. You're not going to be able to have a good experience on websites because you're talking to a website, and the way your browser talks to it is it says, give me this. Okay, give me this. Okay, give me this. newer browsers, the newer protocols that actually ask for a bunch of things at once, right, in order to speed things up. But that's behind the scenes. Doesn't really matter. So the web server that you're asking, your browser is asking for these pages from, or the video, or the picture, that web server doesn't really know what you're doing, where you're at, or what you're looking for. It doesn't really know. It uses cookies for that. So it tells the browser, okay, browser, I want you to remember that the user was on page 1, and then they went to page 10 and went to page 15. So that the next time you as a user ask for a page, or you say, I want to go back a page, using the navigation buttons in the website, not the ones on your browser, the website's going to know, the server's going to know, oh, okay, so he's on session number blah, 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 and so he just said, I'm going to go back. That means I need to show him this page, right? So there's very perfectly legitimate reasons for cookies. They were put in place for those very legitimate reasons. And then what happened is marketers figured out, I can put a cookie onto a web browser and use that to remember what that user looked for. So what happens is many websites, mine included, by the way, have a Facebook cookie on them. They might have a Google cookie. They might have other cookies on the website. And that cookie then keeps track of what you look at on the website. I actually don't use those cookies. I've always had in the back of my mind this desire. I really want to use the cookies so I can highly personalize the experience for everybody and make life good for all involved, right? But I've never gotten around to it. So I got the cookies. I'm just not using the data. However, Facebook is certainly using the data, and Facebook knows what pages you went to on my website. Google would know if I had Google cookies, et cetera, right? Now what we're talking about is a third-party cookie. So you're on my website, and if my website sets a cookie on the website so I can keep track of what you're doing so that you have a good experience on my website, not even so that I can market anything to you, that's one thing. When we're talking about having cookies on my website from Google or Facebook or someone else, now we're talking about third-party cookies. So that's what Google is making a major change on. And by the way, Apple Safari made a major change about this over a year ago to make it much harder for marketers to track you while you're online. This is not a hoser thing. Well, I guess marketers are trying to suck money out of your wallet too, right? But it's very directly a thing for marketers. So it's a privacy issue. And people who have been complaining about cookies forever, misunderstanding their use. And as you might have heard me say before, I'd love to have ads for a pickup truck when I'm looking to buy a pickup truck. I don't want to see ads about things I don't care about, right? Bottom line. I don't want to see ads for things that my wife's looking for, or my kids, or someone else in the office, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have been using third-party cookies if you've been on the internet. Guaranteed, okay? So Google's finally pulling the plug on these things. Bet you didn't see that coming, right? Google, who makes its money by sucking up every possible thing it can in order to sell it to someone else, is making it harder. That makes sense to you? Interesting. So to kick these cookies out the door, Google's got a new feature called tracking protection. Doesn't that sound friendly, wonderful, warm? It's kind of fuzzy, isn't it? Tracking protection. It's a bit like having your own digital bodyguard to fend off prying eyes. Thing is, this isn't just for the tech savvy among us. This is for everyone. So listen close. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? And the answer is, like it is with so many other things, it's very complicated, all right? So what's changing, you ask? Well, let's look at it this way. When you're online shopping for your favorite Hawaiian shirt, hey, I don't see your recent purchases, so, this is just an example, Hawaiian shirt. You may notice similar shirts that are popping up on other websites that you visit. So that's your friendly neighborhood third-party cookie at work, monitoring your web behavior and serving digital ads to match. From now on, this tracking protection feature aims to, in Google's word, give users the option to browse with more privacy, unquote. This doesn't mean you'll stop seeing ads. Instead, it's more like saying you're going to see ads, but we promise we won't remember what you did last summer. The cookie's sudden death means that the brands are going to be thrown a curveball. It's going to hurt their ability to market to you and to other people. And when I say brands, talking about the big guys, it's like everything else, right? Amazon was all around. Let's tax the internet. They were behind it. We need to tax it. We need to make it fair for local merchants, right? Because someone can go online and buy something and not pay sales tax, and that's hurting local merchants. Well, I'm sure it did to a degree. But what they were really doing by pushing for an internet sales tax is Amazon was big enough and is big enough to be able to take into account, handle all the accounting necessary for the 9,000, literally 9,000 plus taxing jurisdictions in the United States. But your little neighborhood store, they're not able to, are they? So what happens if there's an internet tax stuff passed? Well, now your little store isn't going to be able to compete at all with Amazon because they can't afford a team of lawyers and accountants to file the paperwork with 9,000 taxing jurisdictions out there. So what would end up happening is they're going to have to go to another third party who's going to do all of that for them for a fee, and there goes their profit margin, right? So that's why Amazon's behind it. That's why Google is behind this as well, okay? Those little guys are not going to be able to handle this anywhere near as well as the big guys. And the change that Apple made here with not just the Safari browser, but also with their email to block a lot of the ad tracking hurt a lot of businesses out there. Frankly, including mine, because if you get my email, I send the email out on Monday morning, usually, right? And then sometimes I'll send, most weeks, I'll resend it to the people that did not open the email on Wednesday. So occasionally I get a note from somebody. All you have to do is hit reply to the email and it comes to me. So give me time, okay? I was like 2 months behind on answering emails over the holidays. So give me time and I'll get back to you. But sometimes I get a note from people on my email list that get my newsletter every week saying, whoa, wait a minute, I'm getting 2 copies of this. Well, that's because the software I use to send the newsletter does not know that you had already opened the email. And part of the reason for that is because of what Apple did to stop the tracking. And they have a whole bunch of stuff in there so that it makes it very hard for you to be tracked, okay? So it's already hurt. What Apple did is already hurt little guys like me, right? I'm just a little guy. Heck, I'm doing this for free, right? I don't get paid to do this. I get very little business out of this because most listeners are not small businesses that really want some help with their cybersecurity, right? They're using their nephew or niece, or they're using some local company that hopefully is providing them, enough service and protection. Okay, so I pay for this. It costs me about $600 a month just to send emails to everybody on the list. Okay, so it's hurt me as somebody who does it out of the goodness of my heart, who's trying to track what people are interested in so that I can prepare materials that you guys would like. Okay, so yeah, I said okay a lot, didn't I? So this cookie sudden death is really a curveball problem, and it's going to require a major shift in the entire marketing world, a whole new approach. And marketers need to quit obsessing over tracking and measuring every minute detail. It will no longer be possible, okay? Even the most advanced AI can't tell us what the individual consumer is really thinking. So what they're going to do essentially is put us into buckets. So there will be maybe a few hundred people in this bucket, and everyone in that bucket is interested in Craig Peterson's radio show, in cybersecurity and technology and Apple and Samsung and blah, 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 right? And then a marketer can say, I want to advertise to people in this bucket. So, yeah, they might have put you in a bucket with Hawaiian shirt owners, but the ads are going to be a lot less specific to you. I don't think this is such a great idea, but it's going to happen. But it might be reversed. I expect European regulators and others to kick Google in the pants and stop this new practice of theirs. Hey, join up right now, CraigPeterson.com. It's free.